what do I need to enroll my kid in kindergarten? What should I expect? How can I help prepare them for when school arrives? My name is Brianna. I just went through the kindergarten enrollment process, so I'm kind of here to tell you exactly what I experienced, so that way you can at least be a little bit prepared for what you might need to have to enroll your kid in kindergarten, as well as how you can kind of help to set them up for success. So the first thing is, of course, what do you need to enroll your child in kindergarten? Now, your school district may be a little bit different or have different requirements or regulations, but I do think in general, most schools do require these documents. So the documents are an original state issued birth certificate, parent identification. So typically like a photo ID or like some sort of document identifying you as the legal guardian, proof of residency, such as like a utility bill or a rental or lease agreement. This is, I believe, to verify that you live within the district of the school district that you're registering. So if you decide to do like a school of choice, which is actually what we have decided to do for our kiddos, you'll also most likely need to fill out a school of choice form. The school that you're trying to register at will probably have a list of what they need to actually register, so you can verify if this is accurate or if they have additional items to include. But then you will also need an up-to-date immunization record. So you can get this from your doctor's office or your state health department. Now, if you have decided not to vaccinate your children, will also most likely need to provide the vaccination waiver. I believe there's a couple of different ones. There's like a religious exemption as well as like a medical exemption waiver. So if you fall into either of those categories, then you'll need to find and locate the most appropriate form of vision or hearing screening. So your pediatrician can perform a vision and hearing screening. They might do this as like a normal like routine checkup. In my state, they do these for free at the health department. But then some school districts provided the vision and screening and even a dental screening, which we'll talk about here in a second, for free for all of the kids that were going to be registering at that school. You just sign them up, they show up and then they do the screening at the school. Well, the school that we decide to enroll them in as a school of choice, they did not offer these. You had to go and complete these screenings separately on your own. Because of when my son's dental screenings were, and this may also apply to like vision and hearing screening as well, they actually said like he had a dental exam in February and his next one I think is scheduled in September. And they were like, oh, well, we can't use his February dental screening. It's too far away. Like he needs one a little bit closer to when he's going to enroll in school. Would have like a grace period. As long as he had that dental screening done at his September appointment, then that would kind of count. Check with your school district to see what their regulations are, because this may be different than my own experience. So outside of the vision, the hearing, and the dental screening, there was not any additional forms that I had to provide. But when I did show up for kindergarten registration at the school, they did have me fill out a concussion awareness form as well as like a health release record. So the health release record just basically allowed them to share immunization statuses of all of the students enrolled with the state health department. I was not aware of this prior to showing up to my kindergarten's registration, but since my state already knew that's where they got them done, they already had that on file, I didn't have a problem signing a consent form to say like, yes, you can share my child's immunization status with the state. Now, if you have a religious exemption or a medical exemption, you may not feel comfortable signing such waiver. So just think about that prior to going to your kindergarten registration. So that way and look up and research your options. That way you're not kind of standing there befuddled, caught completely off guard. The other thing that I had to sign was a concussion awareness form. And basically this just said like, hey, concussions are possible. This is a likelihood, they're not going to be liable if your child receives a concussion, that type of thing. I know, being a parent, the likelihood is there and I have to recognize that risk as a parent. We had to fill out like an online registration form in addition to providing these documents. And in there, they're like getting our contact information. Do we want to like allow anyone else to pick up or drop off our kids? Whom do they reach out to if they can't contact us? If there happens to be an emergency, all of those like standard things that you would think like, yeah, this is important for school to know. Do they have allergies? Is there anything super important that they should know about? Is there any like behavioral problems, any speech problems? A bit more in depth as far as my son's medical and behavioral history. They took him back separately with a teacher to do a kindergarten screening. Now, I personally have no idea what was included with the kindergarten screening because I was not allowed to be present. From what limited research I did online was probably just some general questions like, what is your name? Can you count to 10? What's your favorite color? I actually went and met with the principal during that time frame, and she asked some very generic questions like, are there any concerns that you have with your son being enrolled here? Anything we should know about? Again, kind of linking back to that, any behavioral, any speech or hearing problems type discussion. We also talked a little bit about any delayed starts that our particular school district will have. I did ask the principal during our discussion was, since we were doing the school of choice form, does that mean that every single year we're going to be on a waiting list to see if we're going to be accepted? And the possibility is like we won't be accepted and we'll have to, go and register at a different school last minute. And she had said, and again, this may be different for yours, is like once my kids are accepted into the school, and as long as we continue to re-register them, then they're automatically included in that school's like registration. The only reason they would like not consider us, part of that school district anymore is if we disenrolled them and went somewhere else. Maybe we pulled them home back to homeschooling for a year. Then again, we would have to kind of be on that whole like new waiting list roster through the school of choice program. One of the other things she recommended was to schedule a tour of the building outside of school hours. I actually really appreciated this because not only will my sons have an opportunity to kind of see the school and kind of get a little bit more familiar with it, like me as a parent, I'll have some idea of where to go and kind of know a little bit more of the school layout. Another thing to think about or consider is to see if they have any before or after school care program. So the school that we specifically chose, they have both, as well as summer care, and they happen to be open during any like school closed days where the school is closed for inclement weather. The childcare center is still open. Now, this childcare specifically is only available to students enrolled in the school, and then it would be very dependent on the childcare availability to enroll your child into like the before and after and summer hour care. So if that's something that you as a parent are really going to need, that might be something you might want to consider or look into. So that way you can make that decision if you're also considering a school of choice for your specific school district. Now, when we were there, they did give us a list to kind of do some different activities with my child to help set him up for the best success come school year. But one other thing that I do want to mention real quick is that they said the first day of school that they actually allow the parents to walk in with your kindergartner. You take them to your classroom, you get them seated, and then they start their first day of school. Now, this is in addition to like a teacher meet and greet. I think that is all fairly standard. But she did say that after the first day, they really highly recommend and encourage and kind of basically implement a kiss and go system where you drive up to the school, you say goodbye to your kids in the car, and then there's teachers and different aides standing outside that will walk and direct your kids into their classroom. So if you have never done a drop off, if you haven't really done daycare before, this will be their first experience like going to school outside of being home 24/7, 7 days a week, then that's something that may be helpful for you to start, for you mentally, start getting used to the idea, as well as help prepping them for that experience when school comes. Now, speaking of prepping them for school, this is a list of things that our school gave us, so that way my kindergartner is set up for success come the school year. So the first one is to read often. You can read to them or they pretend to read. I think this is going to be super important because there's going to be a lot of reading activity and maybe also possibly quiet book time. The other thing is to sing or recite nursery rhymes, take turns and share, count to 10, and write their first name or attempt to with only the first letter capital. Now, my son could write his name, but he was doing it mostly all in capital letters. So, what we've been trying to implement, I have him write his name 3 times, and we kind of practice this, and I kind of coach him and guide him through, like, okay, this is how you need to, modify your letters, and just kind of coach him through what that actually looks like. Now, a bonus point, I think, which, I mean, they didn't say it, but I'm considering it a bonus for us, is to help my son not only be able to write his first name, but also his last name. I don't know if you recall this from ever being in school or if you ever had this experience, but sometimes you get to school and there's like 2 other classmates that have your name, and then you have to make sure you write out your first and last name. So that's something that we'll be working on come, the rest of the summer. Some other things that they have on here is to follow 2-step directions, use scissors, tie or Velcro their shoes on their own. So I'm definitely going to be sending my kindergarten to school with Velcro shoes. Like, I don't know that I am not confident that we'd have that skill mastered by the time he needs to go to school. Sing the alphabet, tell an adult if something is wrong, tell an adult when they need help. This is something that we already kind of do at our house, but one thing I've been really keeping in mind too, the action he needs to take is to walk up to his teacher and say, "Excuse me, I need help." So that's something that we're starting to I'm trying to implement this behavior now and think about in our interactions at home, what can I start coaching him on and how to help guide his behavior, so that way when he gets to school, he's already set up for success, because he's going to need that skill probably for the entire rest of the duration of his school experience. I mean, other than the fact that, they learn to sit in their chair and raise their hand when they need help, when, they're giving a lecture or something like that. Saying his or her first and last name, this kind of pairs pretty well with writing their first and last name, and then taking care of basic needs on their own. And they specifically have a restroom and tissue. When they go to school, their teachers are not really going to be having those interactions with them. I have heard from other moms that they will not receive any help in the bathroom. And if if they can't fully take care of their hygiene in the bathroom, then that means that they're going to end up having and experiencing the consequences of that. So that's something that I definitely want to make sure that even though he has the confidence. So we've talked a lot about that already, as well as just establishing some other behavior. Can you pick out all of your clothes? Can you set out your clothes the night before? We're starting to think about what those behavior modifications need to be for when school comes, because they're not going to have us there helping, but they needed to learn and have the skills and knowledge as well as the tools to be able to complete those things on their own. One thing I'm also thinking about is the fact that we'll need to be packing a lunch for them every day, as well as they're going to have to learn how to eat out of a school lunchbox. That way, when they get to school, they can already confidently open everything, as well as to help train me as the mom to make sure oh yeah, we've got to pack a lunch. We've got to make sure your water bottles are clean. We've got to set out your clothes, so we're not rushing through the experience every single day to get out the door. So that's everything that I have. Hopefully this was super helpful. If you are planning to register your kids in kindergarten or kid, you most likely just have one unless you have twins. But if there's anything else that you have questions about, or if there's something unique to your specific school district that you might think might be helpful for another mom to know, I would love it if you would drop it into the comments. And as school approaches, we'll probably revisit this conversation and, see how did the first day of school go? How are the adjustments, being made with them being enrolled, and those types of things. So that way, you or other moms going through a similar situation, can be prepared. But until we hang out again, I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. So hopefully we can hang out there.